So when we have a nice south-facing roof like that with no shade, we use what's called a string inverter. That means all the power from all the panels goes down through conduit, through wires, into just one or two or three, in this case, inverters. So you can have 12 panels all wired up like a stack of batteries, like in a flashlight. That's called wiring in series. So you have, for 12 panels, you just have 2 wires coming off. And those go down to an inverter, and that turns it into AC power, which is what your outlets and all your computers and everything use. These panels, you know, I mentioned they get a little bit of shade from this cube here. In the wintertime, when the sun is lower, it shades these first couple of panels a little bit. And if we were to use a string inverter here, and all the panels were wired together, it would be like putting 2 dead batteries in a flashlight. I don't know if you guys have ever just had a couple good batteries, so you put them in the flashlight and it just kind of dimly turns on. Those 2 dead batteries are stopping the flow. That happens with solar panels too. So if you go under here, these have a slightly more expensive and slightly newer technology called microinverters to overcome that shade issue. You see this little black box up towards the top here? That's called a microinverter. So every single panel has its own inverter that puts out as much power as that one panel can put out at any given moment. So if I came up here with an umbrella or something and shaded this panel would still be fine. It would still be pushing all the power it can into the grid. On that array up there, we don't have a shade issue, but if we did, and we shaded 1 or 2 panels, all the panels connected to that string, their output would be kind of dampened by that one shaded panel. And so when we're designing the system, we always look at that. Sometimes we have a shade issue and sometimes we don't. If we have one big shade issue that's just going to sweep over at 10 o'clock in the morning and then it's gone, we'll sometimes stick to a string inverter. But if it's going to be a little bit of shade here and here and here and there throughout the day and kind of different, we'll switch to something like microinverters like this. Oh, here. Ian's got my little demo fan. I think it still works. Yes. US. Sorry.
Baby.
Here, let's get over here so I can point to set the sun a little bit more. So, this is a pretty simple setup. It's just a fan for an RV or a school bus. Just plugged directly into the back of this thing. There's no electronics, there are no batteries, no charge controllers, inverters, things like that. Nice and simple. If you come over and shade just a little bit, it shuts down. The interesting thing is, it'll run if I'm completely shading this half of the panel. The way this panel is wired is that this is one string and this is one string. So I can do all the shading I want here, and this string is still fully operational. So I'm covering these 2 full stacks. If I do this, it basically shuts down the whole thing because I'm shading part of 2 strings. So I mean, it's kind of running, but nowhere near what it does when it's totally exposed to the sun. So that kind of explains the microinverter, string inverter kind of thing. So you guys can practice shading this if you want. See what kind of effect it has. Totally not. So you see it's still got a lot of sun on it, even with that shadow. It's really pretty dramatic, you know, but when there's full sun on it, it's really an incredible amount of power. And so you can use this power for anything that you use to power anything, really. Anything that uses electricity can use solar power. It's just a matter of using the right batteries or inverters or charge controllers, things like that to make use of it. Now in your basic grid-tied system, the type you see all over the place in commercial and residential applications. Most of the time there are no batteries anymore. Batteries are really expensive, they're really heavy, they're pretty toxic, and if they're not managed correctly or installed with ventilation and stuff, they can be dangerous too. Really all we need now is panels, wires, and an inverter. An inverter synchronizes the power with the grid, and most utility companies let us do what's called net metering. Net metering lets us use the battery, or the grid, like a battery. So if we're making more power than we need, we just spin our meter backwards, and we get credit for that on our bill. So even though we might be air conditioning at night when there's no solar power, like right now, our air conditioners aren't running much. We're not using a ton of power, but our solar's making a lot of electricity. So right now our meter's probably going backwards, and we can go out back next and take a look at that. So let's go look at an inverter. We've got one in the entryway right here. It's a bit tight in there. Let's go back in the shop. We've got two inverters down there and a bit more space to work with. So follow me. Let's grab that.
I wish Darius could be here.
I didn't know we were getting videotaped.
Hopefully, yeah, we'll have to show the old